Hello and everyone, welcome to class 12 biology. In this video we are going to discuss the first two laws of inheritance proposed by Gregor Mendel, and these two laws are law of dominance and law of segregation. So Mendel proposed these first two these laws based upon his results of monohybrid cross. So Mendel has in fact proposed a third law as well, law of independent assortment, but that we have to discuss only after we learn about dihybrid cross. So we will learn about the third law in later videos. So the law of dominance and law of segregation. Law of dominance is Mendel's first law of inheritance, and like I said, it is based upon Mendel's result of his monohybrid cross. So let's take a quick revision of Mendel's monohybrid cross. In Mendel's monohybrid cross, Mendel took two parental individuals which differed in one character. Over here, we have taken a tall pea plant and a dwarf pea plant. They both differ in one character, which is the stem height. So stem height is the character, whereas tall and dwarf are the two contrasting traits of that particular character. So when the two parents are crossed, Mendel got the F1 generation. All the F1 generations were tall. And when the F1 generation plants were self-pollinated, he got the F2 generation. So the F2 generation, he got it in this particular phenotypic ratio, that is 3:1, 3 tall and 1 dwarf. So that is a quick revision of Mendel's monohybrid cross. Mendel's monohybrid cross results were quite unexpected for Gregor Mendel and very unexpected for people of his time. What people of his time believed was that in hybridization experiments, the two traits or the two characters, they blend in such a way that the offspring will be showing a character which is a mixture of the parents. So if that were true, Mendel would have got a medium height plant over here. But that was not the case. What he got in his monohybrid cross was when the two parents were mixed, the F1 generation individual showed the character of one of the parents. So over here, this F1 generation hybrid is showing the character of the tall parent and not the dwarf parent. The dwarf character is not there in the F1 generation at all. So how did Mendel went about explaining this particular phenomenon or this particular result of his monohybrid cross? What he said was, each character is controlled by a discrete unit called factors, and these factors, they occur in pairs in an individual. So in an individual, there is a pair of factors which is trying to control the characters. And these factors, we can represent them in the form of letters. So over here, I have written the letters down over here. The capital T is the factor which is trying to express itself in the form of tall phenotype, whereas the small t is the factor which is trying to express itself in the form of dwarf phenotype. So if the plant has got both factors as capital T, the plant will obviously be tall, and if the plant has got two small t's, the factors which are both trying to express itself as a dwarf character, the plant will obviously be dwarf. But look over here in the F1 generation. This particular tall plant is having both the factors, right? It is having both the factors, one factor which is trying to make it tall and one factor which is trying to make it dwarf. But the factor which is trying to make it tall seems to dominate the factor which is trying to make it dwarf. So therefore, all the F1 generation plants are tall. So that is what it is. That is what Mendel's law of dominance is, right? In a homozygous individual, there is no confusion. Since both the factors are same, the plant will be tall, the plant will be dwarf. But in this particular case, both the alleles are not same, both the factors are not same. They are heterozygotes. So since they are even though they are heterozygotes, the plant will show only one of the parental characters, and that character is said to be dominant, The character which is not seen in the F1 generation is said to be recessive, right? So therefore, we give the factor which is trying to express itself as a tall phenotype. We just represent them in a capital letter, and the one which is suppressed, we write them in small letter. So that's the reason over here, right? So this particular factor is trying to dominate this particular factor. The capital T is trying to dominate the small t, and it dominates actually. So this is the law of dominance. The capital T, the tall gene, is dominant. The small t, which is the dwarf gene, is recessive. Capital T, tall gene, is dominant, and the small t, which is the dwarf gene, is recessive. So let's see the statement of law of dominance. What does the law of dominance state? So the law of dominance, it states, you might want to copy it down. Law of dominance, it states that characters are controlled by discrete units called factors. We now call these factors as genes, right? Factors, and they occur in pairs. Why do you think they occur in pairs? So the simple answer will be they occur in pairs because most of the sexually reproducing organisms, they are diploid organisms. So they get one gene each from each parent, right? One gene each from their parents, right? One from the father and one from the mother. So therefore, these factors or the genes, they occur in pairs. And in continuation of the explanation of law of dominance is, in a dissimilar pair of factors, when an individual has a dissimilar pair of factors, when an individual is a heterozygote, one member of the pair dominates the other. So let's go back. Look over here. In this particular case, this particular individual tall plant is having a dissimilar pair of factors. One is capital T and one is small t. And in this particular case, the capital T, which is the tall gene, it dominates the dwarf gene. So the dwarf gene is masked by the tall gene. So this is what the law of dominance states. So we will move on to the law of segregation. So the law of segregation is Mendel's second law of inheritance. So this is quite simple, right? If you have studied in class 11 cell division chapter how gametes are formed, this will be pretty easy. So let's look at monohybrid cross again, right? So we have two parents. In the parents, we have got identical alleles or identical factors. Therefore, they are called as homozygotes or true breeding. During gamete formation, what happens is these allelic pairs or the pair of factors, during gamete formation, what happens is they segregate. They segregate means they separate. The two capital T's, they are together in the tall individual. But during gamete formation, what happens is these allelic pairs, they separate. So they separate. So they separate in such a way that each gamete, they get one of each pair, right? They get one of each pair. So same thing goes for the dwarf plant as well. When the dwarf plant is producing gametes during gamete formation or during meiosis, what happens is the allelic pairs, they get separated. And during fertilization, what will happen? The two gametes will come together and the alleles will pair up. And when the alleles pair up, what happens? So this particular plant is produced, and this particular plant is tall because, why? We discussed in law of dominance that the capital T dominates the small t. Okay, so that is law of segregation. We will continue, right? In the F1 generation, when it tries to produce gametes, this F1 hybrid, right? It has got different alleles over here or different factors over here, one capital T and one small t. When this produces gamete, the gametes will be having half of the gametes will be having capital T and half of the gametes will be having small t. That means 50% of the gametes will be having capital T and the 50% of the gametes will be having smaller t. So here the gametes are produced, two different types of gametes are produced, whereas in the previous one over here, These two parents, since they are homozygous, they will produce only one type of gamete. Means for the tall plant, all the gametes produced by tall plant will be carrying capital T, and all the dwarf plants, all the gametes produced by the dwarf plant will be carrying small t. So that is the a simple explanation of law of segregation. So the law of segregation simply states that uh, allele pairs, they separate or segregate during gamete formation, and they randomly unite. It is unite, okay? It unites at fertilization. So that is law of dominance and law of segregation. So I hope you are clear about what is law of dominance and what is law of segregation. Now there is one question over here. Are the two laws, that is law of dominance and law of segregation, are the two laws applicable for all sexually reproducing organisms? Just think carefully. The question simply means, are the laws universal? I have seen this question being asked in board examinations in previous papers, in previous years. They have asked whether the law of dominance and law of segregation are universal or not. So you have to support your answer. The answer is, the law of dominance is not universal. The law of dominance is not applicable for all the sexually reproducing organisms. Whereas the law of segregation, the way the alleles segregate during gamete formation, that law is universal. That law is universal, I think it's because of the universality of meiosis, which is involved in gamete formation. If meiosis is not involved in gamete formation, then maybe this law of segregation would not have been universal. It would not have been applicable for all sexually reproducing organisms. So in simple words, we can simply say that law of dominance is not universal and law of segregation is universal. So if you need to support your answer, why law of dominance is not universal, then that particular thing we will cover in the next video. Next topic will be incomplete dominance and codominance. So these two phenomena, incomplete dominance and codominance, will prove why law of dominance is not universal. All right, so I hope you read about incomplete dominance and codominance before watching the next video. Thank you.